Hello, everyone, and welcome to a wild episode. Normally, the free agency episodes are our biggest episodes, but we also had news break today that unfortunately two teams are leaving the league. Those teams are EG and Golden Guardians, and unfortunately, it has not been handled in a very graceful way. Many people are losing their jobs, and players are finding out last minute that deals that they thought they had have gone away. So we're going to be talking about that today. It's going to be a really big episode. Before I introduce my constant co-host, I do want to have just a warning to everybody that yes, I am in a hotel room. I am still traveling. I spent a bunch of time doing some tech stuff earlier today, but it does unfortunately mean that my audio, the audio setup I had, is unfortunately not working. So we're going to use integrated audio for this. And then just before this, Mark and I were having some connection issues. I don't think the Wi-Fi here is that great. So video will be uploaded. I think everything will be fine once it gets uploaded. Audio will still be rough, but just if you're listening to the episode, you hear tech issues or something like that, I apologize. Please bear with us. But let me go ahead and introduce my constant co-host, Mark Zimmerman. Mark, how you doing?
I'm doing great, man. It's a good week. World Finals just happened. That was really hype. We can talk about the different performances. I think something that got totally glossed over was that sick TFT video, man. There's so much cool stuff to talk about. Plus all these leaked rumors of you know the teams, the rosters. Jojo to C9. There's so much great stuff to talk about. Absolutely incredible week for League of Legends.
Yeah, sure. Let's go with that. I will say, by the way, we're recording this right as free agency opens, so we'll see how things are happening. Maybe we'll have live updates as teams are announcing signings and that type of thing, because basically right as we started, it became the free agency window. So we'll see as players get signed and perhaps announce while the stream is going. Um, let's do a quick shout out though to our partners for this stream. Alienware, as always, there's a link in the description. They're doing some Black Friday deals. We'll talk more about them later. And then one thing that I've decided to start trying to do, not on every episode, but on some episodes, is look, esports winter's here. We don't always have all the sponsors that we can for this episode or for these shows. And so I'm trying to find some charities to partner up with, and especially because this is our big free agency episode, and we're covering huge news, though I didn't know it at the time. I spoke to a group called Only One, which is a organization that helps work on environmental initiatives. I'll give some more details later on, but we are going to be promoting a petition to protect 30% of the world's oceans by 2030. So they're not a sponsor for this. We're not accepting any compensation from them, but I do figure, hey, if we have these sponsor segments, why not try and do something cool with them if unfortunately we don't have full brand fill on that. So we'll talk more about that later on. But yeah, Mark, I guess I should say what I mean, the biggest news, unfortunately, normally it's an exciting day. We're seeing all these teams get picked up, etc. We will talk about all that stuff. We will take calls about that in this episode. But off of the top of this, what do you think of the news as we've seen EG and GG leave?
Oh boy. Oh boy. I mean, obviously, the thing you have to talk about first is just like hearts go out to all the players and staff who found out today. If this is how they found out, if the teams didn't tell them before or what, I don't know, but definitely feels bad for a lot of them to not have a position potentially in 2024. That is obviously. Oh, we are we
Yeah,
back?
it's
I
gonna
see a
it's
lot of
gonna
F's in
happen
chat.
every now and then. It's just gonna be a quick blip, and then we will have to, and then the internet will reconnect. So it's just gonna happen every now and then
Here's
during the
my
show.
question:
Yeah.
if it blips, should I repeat? I don't want to have to call attention every
No.
time, but should I repeat myself or?
No.
Okay,
Because we're gonna, if
okay.
somebody
As long as it's
listens to
listenable.
the audio or the video of this or the podcast later, I don't want to have to have them hear everything over and over and over again.
Yep,
We're
yep,
just
yep.
every now and then we're gonna drop some frames, and it's just gonna be the way it is because of
Yeah, yeah.
Marriott's internet.
Pog. Yeah, I mean, just obviously that stuff you always feel bad for them. And I think that is like the first and foremost thing that I think a lot of people think about. I think there's the ecosystem conversation is like the more, because that's like everyone can universally agree like that sucks for people and players and staff and stuff. But the bigger like unsolved part is like what does this really mean, and I don't know, that's a lot to talk about too.
Yeah, and I do appreciate you pointing it out because as much as you mentioned that people um, are going to be Steve of the chat says rip Marriott sponsorship. Guys, it's esports winter. None of us are getting sponsorships. Um, but as much as people like, I do see a lot of people having glee for especially the EG departure because they didn't like EG or whatever. And I do think a lot of people are jumping forward on like, oh, whatever. I hope that at least everyone acknowledges the shit situation that this is for people who have just found out today. I know somebody over at Golden Guardians today who messaged me and they're like, "Well, I just got my email cut off, so if you need to email me, Travis, here's where it's at." People are finding out today that they're just losing their job, and so I just hope people really think about that and speak to this stuff with sensitivity. Of course, there is the conversation we have to have about the impacts on the region and the LCS and all that, and we will be fielding calls about it. But I I think that's the first thing I want to make sure everybody knows.
Yeah. I think there's like the timing question, which is another big one, because I think the comms that went out about that, I saw a lot of like community backlash instantly be like, what do you mean this is good for teams and play? Because there was that kind of thing. Like we got it done before free agency. I think there's that angle. There's the talk about like teams commitment to the LCS currently. And then there's also like, what does it mean for the ecosystem overall, which seem like the three big like areas to talk about the bigger picture stuff, at least. I don't know if there's another one I'm missing in your mind.
No, I think that's right, and we'll have callers to give us takes if they need to. And again, I don't want it's like a crazy thing because such a huge topic, but like we do need to talk about free agency on this episode as well. So please, feel free, folks, whenever you're putting your takes in to make sure that they're not, if you want to talk about one of these free agency signings or something like that, please feel free to have that conversation as well.
Yeah, I mean it's a weird
Okay.
episode too because usually post Worlds, like you and I are like, did you like the thing that they did for the opening ceremony? What did you think of the performance? Like, New Jeans came up there, but there was a guy with a Leona thing. Would you rather focused on New Jeans? Like, what do you think about the
Yeah.
actual games and the storylines? And like, unfortunately, most of that's probably going to be
No,
pushed to the
normally
side. I
World
mean, I'm still
Finals is weeks before the free agency. So not only did we have World Finals, which I think we just have to say congratulations T1 and move on from. I don't think that we can really talk too much about it on this episode. And then not
I'll
only
look
do we
for a
have free
take if
agency,
it's
but we have
great,
this.
but yeah,
Yeah. Um,
yeah,
so I think before we get into calls, I do want to share my take on all this stuff, and people can call in and disagree or whatever. But I do want to point out that if you go back multiple times, I think even this year, but probably in the last year as well, um, that you will find moments in time where on this show I have said I really wish the league was 8 teams, and I think that it would be better for the league. The league would be healthier with 8 teams. Now, when I said that in the past, it was at a time where Academy had not been gutted the way it has. And so I think, removing 2 teams was not the equivalent to removing a huge percentage of the opportunities for players to compete. And obviously, when I said it would be great if the league went down to 8 teams, I did not mean randomly 4 hours before free agency starts on a Monday with no notice to the players or the staff members who were a part of it. Um, so this is 5,000% not the way I would want that to happen. But I do think, and I know some people are like, oh, that's just cope or whatever, or people are gonna think, oh, he's just saying this because of he's trying to shill for Riot or something like that. But like again, I have had this opinion previously publicly long before this was, I think, even considered. So um, I don't need to explain all those reasons now because I'm sure we're going to get that in these calls. But I just want to kind of establish that at the front because that is my stance. I do think that like short term this is awful, long term this is fine, especially if Riot can solve tier two in a meaningful way. Um, so that's that's what we're at. I also want to give a shout out to Immortals for living up to their name. I think it's incredible that at a time where we're going down two teams, they have survived against all odds, including at a time when I think what the whole thing is that they should be able to be removed from the league now, right? And yet here they are. So it's just a very impressive thing that they've been able to survive. So
I think this immortal slander is ridiculous. All right, people love talking about business, who's ahead of the meta or not, and the economics and stuff. They predicted the budget roster strat long before the rest of these teams caught up in 2024.
yeah,
100 Thieves are now copying their homework. Everyone's copying their homework, and no one's giving Immortals credit for it. So I just want to give them a little shout out.
yeah. Somebody says stolen joke as if that is not literally the easiest joke that everyone has been making. Listen, folks, I made that joke before the news was public, so anybody making it afterwards is stealing it from me if we want to go on stealing jokes. All right. Should we just hop into callers, or is there anything else that we should talk about at the start here?
I mean, normal. Can we talk a moment about Worlds? Like, do you want to just quickly, the two of us, even if we don't get like a topic on it? Because there are some topics about like T1's the best team ever, and like some of the things that this means for Faker's legacy, which like, I don't know if it's tone deaf. I still want to talk about that as a League of Legends fan, but like, I do.
No, no. Speak your piece, Mark.
Well, I mean, like, I wouldn't mind pulling a Faker slash T1 take, but I was also just wondering, like, the opening ceremony stuff, because you and I were texting back and forth that whole time about the opening ceremony, and like what it was like in venue versus out or whatever.
Yeah. No,
And
I think no, I think that's fair. I was there, and I really liked the opening ceremony. I thought it was really great. They used pyrotechnics in venue, I think, to because like when you're in the venue and they do any of these AR things, you're really only looking at a screen and on the side of the stage that is showing you what is being shown to the rest of the broadcast or like the rest of the world, quite frankly. And so it looks cool, but also you're kind of disconnected from that. But one thing I thought that they did that was very clever was the pyrotechnics around when like Mordekaiser's in the audience and all that stuff. Um, I thought that that was really well done. I do think it might be better for them to move away from animated. Like I get that like the whole point is that KDA or Heartsteel or whatever is on stage and it's fun to see but like I have not seen those models progress and I would say that they perhaps regressed a little bit this year. They did look kind of Lego-y to me whenever they were on stage. Um, or at least on the stream and stuff. And so I think, quite frankly, that was the only part where the opening ceremony fell for me a little bit. And even then, it's fine. Like I think we are a little. Sometimes we forget, like, wow, this live performance bringing in visuals of the video game and all that stuff on stage in this sold out arena, blah blah blah. It's below my standard. It's a little funny because we take these really incredible performances and all the hard work and all this crazy stuff that you could not have done even 10 years ago for granted. But I do think that like that was the only part that looked a little cheesy or weird to me. But I liked the themes of the average player coming onto the stage, and I liked the aspects where it showed all the different representation and that folks and that type of stuff. And I really did like the the Leona solar flare blast, the Leona ultimate on the audience and all that, which I do think, thankfully she didn't hit any of the audience members with that stun, but it was good.
Yeah, I thought that was the most like I don't want to say weird, but like I just didn't understand. Like maybe there's a lore thing, or maybe there's no lore thing. But like the whole why is it Mordekaiser versus Leona? Like wasn't like built at all on, throughout like the marketing or something. Which like maybe it doesn't have to be. I don't know. It just was like kind of confusing to me. I like the anyone can win worlds, or like it could be you next, or like whatever that kind of thing was with like the different people. That was cool, and I liked when he drew the sword, and like you kind of fused the AR with like that stuff, and Leona came down ulted. Like all that looked really sick to me. But sometimes I felt like we were cutting away to like this Mordekaiser thing when like people are on stage performing, and like Rise was kind of like weird because they were trying to build in these moments. I almost wonder if there's like not like you have to hard pick one, but like is this supposed to be more of like an augmented reality virtual experience showcase, or is this a concert? Because like right now we're kind of in this kind of felt like it was trying to do both things at once and kind of shortchanging both, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, the other thing is I have not seen how they cut it yet, because I have seen some people say like, oh, they're like somebody in the chat is screaming in all capital letters, which I thought we had like a bot to protect against that, but said, how do you have new jeans but then have them standing behind some weirdo random wearing yellow or whatever? So like it's hard for me because I don't know what the broadcast representation of everything I was seeing looked like. I was thinking about that, Mark, because you and I talked as we were messaging back and forth, and I had the whole flight back to think about it. I honestly know that like there's not maybe a lore connection between Mordekaiser or Leona, or maybe there is and they retconned it in the last 5 minutes because that's what they do with the lore all the time. But I do think perhaps what they started with was what looks good in a stadium that's like dark, and perhaps it was like we can make Mordekaiser look really visually cool, with like all this smoke filling the arena and stuff, and then we can have this awesome like light blast go through the sky, and maybe it's easier to kind of show those levels of like particle stuff rather than have like I don't know Jinx fighting Jace or something.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really think it looked bad or anything. I just like there were times where I wish I was watching New Jeans, or like I didn't understand. Like I wish that they had fleshed out like the struggle more or something, or like I don't know, man. It was good. I think I don't want to be hyperbolic and say it was bad or anything. It was still enjoyable, and I was like, oh shit, it's Rise. Oh shit, it's this. But I don't know. I wish I just heard Mako perform because he was way better this time. Like the performances were so good. I think it's maybe the reason that I wish there was more of a focus on the concert angle this time around. I think everyone was like really, really good at the concert stuff. And if like the choreography and the cinematography was more focused on like this is going to be in shot and frame all the time, like maybe I don't know, it comes across cleaner.
Yeah,
Because I really like the vocals.
Unfortunately, we will be talking over each other sometimes on the show, guys, because of the Wi-Fi issues. But I think thinking back to 2017 or whatever, when they had Legends Never Die and the dragon flew in, they like stopped. They cut out of the music to show the dragon doing the cool thing. Then they resumed music again. And it is true that I think they had like the AR stuff a little bit more as a through line through all that stuff. And so maybe if they did a better job of almost segmenting it better, I don't know. But again,
they kind of did that. Yeah, they did that a little bit, especially with the Rise one, where there was like a recomposed Rise, where they were like beats for things to play out before the next like chorus start and stuff. That one felt maybe the most clear, like when it was supposed to cut away or not. Whereas like the Heartsteel song and Gods, sometimes it cut away at what felt like what
yeah,
kind of moments.
Yeah,
whatever.
Okay, so did you want to talk at all about the games, which were pretty one-sided?
They were pretty one-sided, so I think it's more like a T1. Where does this run stand at the end of time? Kind of thing. Yeah. There's a call about that though, so I'll pull a take to break up all the keep the conversation fresh and flowing.
Sure. So good time to go into calls then.
Sure, let's do it.
Do you want to do the spiel? Nope, he's already gone. All right. Shout out to EMBW, Slawcat, Pat the Gray, Cool455, CN Teal, Nickelodeon, Hippo Squirrel, Jose Pumo, Hey Waza, Knight of Rohan, the Catman, Laserfruit, Penguin God, Jaffe, Thunderburb, and D to the Money and Son of Key. Thank you, everybody. Oh, and Numi as well. Thanks, everybody, for the subs. Really, those subs do help, so thank you so much for them. Esports winter is cold. Chief is here. Chief, where are you calling from?
Texas.
Texas. What do you want to talk about on the show?
So I was going to talk about the downsizing the LCS, which I know what a lot of people are thinking about. But basically, I was saying that it does have some valid points of why there's some doom and gloom there. People losing their jobs is obviously never good, but the grassroots part of LCS is what made it great. You look at when we started losing viewers, franchising doesn't seem to be working, and with Worlds having record viewers but LCS having record low viewers, something needed to change, and I'd rather see something change in LCS rather than keep all 10 teams, have 2 teams that don't care, maybe 3 or 4 teams that don't care if we talk about 2 other ones that kind of stayed. And I'd rather see something change and hope for something better rather than nothing change and just watching the slow decline.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I agree that like change for change's sake is good. Which is I think kind of where it sounds like you're at. I mean, if EG and Golden Guardians want to leave, I don't think it's a good idea to be like, nope, you guys have to fucking stay here. Like that is it's just they're just not going to be good partners for you. So I agree with that. I do think that Golden Guardians this year did do a pretty good job as an organization, certainly especially competitively. So I do think losing them is a bit of a bummer. Can you expand a little bit though on what you mean by the grassroots stuff? Because I'm curious how you think that kind of plays into today's announcement.
Yeah, so we lose 2 teams, but there's obviously a gap where we could fill with 2 more. We have a lot of options of what we could do. You can have relegation and promotion, which I think a lot of people are interested in. And I know in your interview you mentioned it, and he said it wasn't out of the question. I think the most popular team in the Challengers League was a Disguised Toast team. I think it made me more interested in watching just because there was more of a content formation there where you could actually connect with the players. I think you have more of an opportunity to have that relegation and promotion allowing you to have more NA talent come in rather than just trying to pay for the most expensive player or having imported players come in and decide that, hey, we're just going to throw money at this or throw imports here and hope that it works rather than trying to cultivate something from the Challengers League instead.
Yeah, and we should say, by the way, I should say because I realized we didn't do a great job of like actually talking about the news itself at the start of the show, and what is happening. But if anybody is listening to this after the fact, I assume everybody in the live chat does. But if anybody's listening to this in the aftermath, you can go look at my interview with John Needham, where we did a pretty good job, I think, of talking about stuff. And I think there's some details in there that's not in the announcement that Riot put out today, so that'll give good context on all this stuff. Promotion relegation, though, I think I would not be surprised if Riot moves to something where 2 slots are. So in Valorant, there are permanent or long-term partners. They don't call them permanent, which is perhaps what, in retrospect, they should have done with the LCS stuff, because these folks have not been as permanent, I think, as folks expected. But they do have some spots that are available for people to move into, and in some cases move out of. And so I wouldn't be surprised if LCS moves to that down the road. I don't think that they will do it for next year. But yeah, I mean, I think that could be interesting. I still kind of feel as though the league is better at 8 teams. And what it sounds like what you're suggesting would be moving us back to that 10-team model or keeping it in the 10-team model, depending on how you look at it.
Yeah, I think you could even go to 9 teams, not even having to go back to 10. I just think having that idea for promotion relegation allows the amateur scene to have growth because right now it seems like it's a dead end for a lot of people.
Yeah.
So I think having that opportunity for growth allows people to say, there is a career in NA for League where, in Korea or China, like that is something that they strive for. But in NA, you used to see people saying like, there's nothing here. There's no point in grinding this game. Let me try something else.
Yeah. Yeah.
Travis, you said there that like you think 8 teams could be good for the league. What's your reasoning for that? I've seen other people's reasoning. I was wondering what yours is.
Yeah, and you and I
know
have
we've
talked about this on
it before,
Hotline.
but just for like colors, yeah.
So I think here's a couple different things. I don't think even back in the 2018 when the stuff franchised, I don't think that the league fan base was ever big enough to support 10 brands. And I think there was an expectation like, oh, franchising is going to make this thing go bigger and bigger and bigger. And I don't know, maybe we're all of us love to look at the stuff in hindsight and think 2020, but at the time there was a lot of hype around the LCS and around esports in general, and so I don't think it's that crazy that people had the expectation that this stuff could continue to grow, especially when more and more resources and these big sports entities and everybody was coming into it. Regardless, I don't think that the player base or the fan base at the time could support 10 teams. I still don't think it can, especially now. And so distributing the fandom across less teams total, I think, is better. Think for those that are listening, think about the LCS, the broadcast, social media, all of its content creation efforts, its marketing efforts. When for every team that you have in this league, you have to spend more of the time or divide more of your resources up around supporting and promoting those teams, right? Like you have to talk about those teams, you have to broadcast those teams, you have to create segments and media days. Media have to go interview those players sometimes. You can't just pretend they don't exist. And so whenever you can concentrate more of that on fewer teams and fewer players and all that, I think it is better. You have less games that people are like, oh, these are the teams we don't care about as much. Now, I think it's unfortunate because EG and Golden Guardians were two brands that people knew a lot and cared, I think, a lot more about one way or the other than Dig and Immortals, for instance. So these would not be the two teams that I would have picked from a brand perspective, but I think with Dig or with all that considered, I do think 8 teams is better. Also on the financial side, it's just less mouths to feed. And I don't mean with the staff and the players. I think, obviously I don't want to be insensitive there and be like, aha, yes, they don't have to be paid now. But it is just in general, you're splitting the league revenue across less folks. And I don't know how Riot's planning on doing all that with minimum guarantees and all that stuff right now. But like, I just think overall, like our league is more representative of our region is more representative of a place where we have 8 teams that should be competing rather than 10.
I think that's it's mostly an economic thing for you. I think for some people, like we have a call about like the Valorant style system, promo relegations, and tier 2 upward mobility. Like there's a bunch of other potential reasons that people talk about. But I think whether or not it's a good thing for the scene is TBD in a sense, because true, there's like a lot of these potential things that could benefit from these changes, but like you actually need to see follow through on like other parts of the league, because it's like this isn't a like to me at least, it's not like on its own a positive change. It is the potential for like in the future other things that maybe could be good to happen. You know what I'm saying? Like on its own, I don't know if it's strictly beneficial. Especially
no, I
like
agree. You have to take advantage of the opportunity that's given there, right? And I think sometimes we don't do that. But the way I thought about it earlier on stream is like, because some people I think have this idea of like, how can you tell me that less teams is better? And what I would say is like, think about, do you think that the league can support 12 teams or 16 teams or 24 teams? Like, we all agree that there's a world in which there are too many teams on the LCS. I think that slider is around 8 or so teams, not 10. That is the way to think about it.
Yeah. I think the other thing too is like, while 8 economically, like you said, less mouths to feed on the team side, not player side that we're talking about. But like the thing is, like, there's going to be a negative hit to the PR of the league as well, just from this, happening and the optics and all that kind of stuff. So like, you do need to like find a way to recoup that as well. Like, even if it is that,
Yeah. No, I think that's fair.
Yeah.
Caller, thank you so much. Anything you want to add before we go on to the next call?
No, I think you guys covered it. I think mostly I was saying that everyone's kind of, from what I saw, is kind of looking at this as a bad thing that the LCS is dying. And I think what Mark was saying with like there's potential for something good to come out of it. I think that's very true and something that people need to be thinking about as well.
Yeah, and 100%. And to be clear, I want to acknowledge, like, Riot, like, as much as Golden Guardian's tweet said otherwise, this was not like a strategic decision from Riot where they sat there and they're like, finally we've realized that like 8 teams is better. We're going to do this with the intent of making the league stronger. This is like an emergent issue. So on its face, and especially short term, I don't think it's good. But I think if Riot makes the right decisions around this, it is probably leaves the league in a better place than it was before.
Some of the memes around what this means is also super funny. Like, all right, guys, everyone makes playoffs in summer now. Top 8 go to summer.
Yes.
Go to playoffs.
Immortals is now a top 8 team. Yeah.
Yeah, you have like half of our league goes to Worlds now, assuming like if they keep the 4th place match. It's like, yeah, there's some questions that need to be answered. Like you said, this is clearly not like fully completed transition.
Well, the crazy thing is, I mean, when I was talking to Needham, he was basically like, yeah, this all happened during like the last 2 weeks of Worlds, right? And so, like, that's the timeline here. I am not surprised they don't have other stuff figured out because, you have executives and leadership flying back and forth between Korea during all this stuff. This is oftentimes, I think, a time where like the regions themselves think that they need less staffing. People might be going on vacations or whatever, and then this all pops up and they have to figure everything out in 2 weeks. So I think it's going to be a busy December for them as they get ready for next year. So we'll see.
Yeah, I hope it's clear that wasn't a shot that they didn't have these things figured out yet. Just that like clearly this is in terms of what we're saying about like potential for moves. Like you have a lot of levers that need to get tweaked as a result of this. And I do want to talk more about the timing, but maybe another call is better for that one.
Yeah. So thanks so much, Chief. Anything you want to shout out?
No, not really, but I appreciate it, guys. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks. Have a good one.
See it.
All right. I think we're good
so
for another call.
Steve is in Discord and wants to talk, but he's muted on Discord. And I told him he was up next, but I don't know if he's had a chance to see that message yet. So if Steve is listening, I'm gonna pull you if you unmute. As soon as you undeafen, excuse me, I will pull you. But I also don't want to wait too long, so I'm gonna start potentially pulling someone else, and we'll just interrupt that person whenever Steve's ready.
Steve, unmute your headphones.
Undeafen, yeah.
Yeah.
Whatever. I'm gonna go pull someone else in the meantime.
Yeah. I've lowered bitrate. I'm sorry that it looks like Steve okay, cool. We should have Steve here in a second. It looks like he's figuring stuff out. Thank you to Bernie's Left Nut for the Prime, 12 months. Jordan for 64 months. Tom Shu for 60. Z Crisp, Mad Hog. Thank you, everybody. We got Steve from Team Liquid here. Steve, where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Los Angeles, California. How you doing,
Great.
Travis? Thanks for having me on.
Good to have you on
What's
the
up,
show. What is your take? What do you want to talk about today on the show? Do you have a take, or are we here to ask you questions?
Both can work. I guess my first take or kind of reaction to everything, I think you led with this, but it's something that I share your opinion, which is, I really want to say for the teams that will be exiting and all of their players and staff, finding out kind of what feels like the 11th hour before free agency starts really sucks, honestly. If you like double click onto that, you've got probably a set of players that had their contracts expiring, and they may have been given permission to go and explore the market, right? And then you had some players that were signed to multi-year contracts and they probably thought that they were going to be safe, and that they had a job next season. I don't know how many are, between the two of those. And then you have a number of staff that, I'm not sure if Golden Guardians is closing shop fully on everything that they're doing, including like Melee and just, folding the org. I don't know, but it impacts even more outside of League of Legends. And so I really feel for all the staff that, just won't have jobs going into next year that thought that they were going to have something. I think that's just it's a really good point,
Yeah.
and then the next thing is like, I don't know what those organizations are doing with those staff, right? Like, for example, if Team Liquid were to exit with staff because of a business reason, let's say, for example, we used to be in PUBG and we're no longer in PUBG. And so we had to communicate to our staff that were working in PUBG about that, right? You can do it in a couple different ways. You can go to them and be like, look, tomorrow's your last day, no severance, see ya, which it seems like maybe that was part of the communication. Or you can go to folks and be like, hey, here's X amount of months severance, like get on your feet. But from a business perspective, we just can't stay in PUBG anymore. It doesn't work economically for us or whatever the reason is. And so like how these orgs handle it once they've made the decision, I think is something that isn't really being talked about online, but is very much part of the conversation and important, right? Because there's like when the organization and the executives knew, and then when the staff knew, and then how the company sent that message to their staff. And what was that message? I have no idea.
Yeah.
But I think that is important context and all of that.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard some Golden I've heard a lot of the Golden Guardian staff found out today what was happening. So I think that was at least part of how things happened. It was not like a lot of people knew going into this. But I do know some of them are already getting kicked out of their email. So, I don't know. Clearly, not everyone's being retained, I think, but I think everyone would be surprised if that was the case. So, Steve,
yeah,
Mark, you were gonna say
even being kicked out of your email like the same day, that's kind of shitty.
Yeah.
Like, what the hell?
Yeah. Hearing that, I was like, what the? I can understand. Like, you can even make a case, though. I like don't love it, that like there's a reason to keep it close to your chest as like it's unfolding. Assuming what the timeline John Needham was kind of talking about, like you don't want it to leak before it's like done and dusted and like actually happening and stuff. And so like you don't want to tell your staff like, hey, we're thinking of leaving, and then like, oops, never mind. Or I can understand that, but to then be like really cold about it is crazy. Because Veteran, when he leaked this, said like the voting and the conversations happened on Monday of last week. So that's a pretty short turnaround in terms of then getting the decision actually executed legally or whatever. Like I don't know how the process went. I don't know if there's anything you can share there too, Steve.
Yeah, Steve, to that point, somebody in the Twitch chat was saying, oh, Steve, why did you vote for 2 teams to leave the LCS? I think there's some misunderstanding of how this stuff went down and what it was like on the team side. So I'm sure you can't give us all the details because of agreements with Riot, but I'd love if you could share everything that you can with the audience.
Yeah, totally. I think part of it started a bit ago in terms of the teams coming together and making some recommendations to Riot about what the future of the LCS could look like. We included a bunch of stuff in there in terms of content and broadcast and structure and best of 1 and best of 3, and kind of is this really thought out kind of presentation. And so the teams kind of all worked together to send that over to Riot and present it. And they were really receptive on that, which was awesome to see and collaborative. But when Riot reached out and kind of said, hey, we're gonna start a process to find out if to see what the number of teams are going to be for next year. And, we're kind of comfortable with 10 teams or maybe 9 teams or maybe 8 teams. but we're going to offer to all the teams, if you want to basically raise your hand and opt out, then raise your hand and opt out. And so then, they had conversations with all the teams. Of course, I'm not party to those conversations. We of course are not going to opt out. So we didn't jump on those calls with Riot to figure that out. So, it was not a unilateral decision, and Riot was comfortable going into next split with 10 teams if all 10 teams wanted to be here. Those teams decided to exit. The terms associated, I think, Travis, you brought this up with Needham. What were the terms associated with that exit or the termination of their agreements? I don't know. That hasn't been shared. But they came to terms with something and they left. So this wasn't a vote. This wasn't other teams pushing them out. They just wanted out, and to be honest, from like a business perspective, I want all the teams that are in the league to be committed to the league. I think that's a good thing.
Yeah.
It's just like a player. If a player's on a team is like, I don't want to be here, it's like, okay, that's okay. We'll find another player, So from my perspective, I think Riot ran it well. They offered the same offer to all teams.
Yeah, and I think in my interview with Needham, he kind of implied at one point in time that they had to react to something. So I don't know if that was a team going to them and saying, hey, we're not going to be participating, like we're dropping, or if it was a team that was basically saying we're not going to be able to be financially there. I don't know what it is. It could have been any of these things, but it does seem as though like this was not sort of a gradual process where they just decided, hey, we're going to go down to 8 for next year. It does seem as though there was some sort of catalyst that sparked this conversation. Because I assume that a lot of this, Steve, like when they approached you guys about, hey, do you want to be in the league next year? I assume that's relatively recent. I mean, Needham was saying basically in the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, that's accurate.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely, like, again, on like the longer term side of things, it's very true that like you don't want people who don't want to be there, because that, in terms of dilution of the people who do want to be there, how much money they're getting in from Riot, as well as like how much they're probably supporting their players and staff to have success in the league. And like there's a million reasons you can list for why you wouldn't want someone who doesn't want to be there to like be forced to stick around if you have a way out. But again, the turnaround time was very quick, and it seemed like maybe this is like reading too far into it. Because I know that the Needham comment about like good for players has been picked apart. I forget exactly what his phrasing was there.
He says it's like good for the league, is what he said, and then he later on, or you're talking about in a statement, but or in the interview.
I think he said it in both. Like they got it done in time.
He said he thinks that it strengthens on the player front. He said like we still have a lot of opportunities for players and stuff like that. He did kind of downplay the impact on the player stuff, which I think is like, quite frankly, a PR miss more than anything, because I can't imagine he honestly believes like, this is better for players, or everything's fine.
Well, he didn't say better, to be clear. He said we made this change prior to the free agency that begins today to allow impacted players the ability to pursue opportunities in other teams and leagues. And like everyone's response to that is like, well, based off the verbal handshakes and all these things, like there's really not that much time. But like probably from his perspective and the league and Riot, it's like, well, the options were to have these like zombie orgs walking around potentially in your league, or to do it after free agency, after they sign contracts, like in terms of options, like maybe they're saying like, we're glad that we could get this done before free agency rather than this is good, and like, I think maybe that's where the disconnect is on this point. Cause it doesn't, I understand where a lot of like the community is coming from with some of their thoughts, but like maybe that's more the perspective is like, well, what's like option 2 if you like went slower or something? Because it sounds like if what Steve's saying, it happened in 2 weeks, it's like when we've been seeing the verbal contracts agreed upon as far as a week and a half ago or whatever. So like when in that window could it have happened? I guess is my question now.
Yeah, Steve, do you think this changes the economics of the league in any way for you guys? Like, is it? I can't imagine that suddenly there's a lot more revenue. It's not like you gobble up the sponsorship dollars that those teams were getting.
I mean, economically, there's two impacts. There's on the revenue side and on the cost side. So to your point on the revenue side, will moving from 10 teams to 8 teams in some way economically benefit? There are going to be more sponsorship revenues. There are going to be more media rights revenue, those sorts of questions. Probably not, to your point. The cost side, probably yes, right? So, what are the costs associated with Riot running 10 teams versus 8 teams? There's probably a savings there. I don't know exactly what those look like.
I just meant from the team perspective, and it's not going to make a big economic impact for Team Liquid.
No. I mean, the way that the LRP works is, and for those that don't know the LRP, it's basically like the pool of dollars that the league generates by selling stuff. And then each of the teams gets an equivalent split of that pool, and it's split equally. So you can divide it by 10 or you can divide it by 8. So if the pot is bigger and it's divided by less teams, then the teams would benefit economically. But Riot also has a minimum guarantee against that pool of money. And so it just depends in 2024, if the league generates more revenue than the MG, then teams could economically benefit because it's dividing by 8 instead of 10.
Yeah.
So time will tell is the answer.
Well, I know you won't speak to this, but my expectation, based off of things I have heard, is that it is unlikely that next year the revenue surpasses the minimum guarantee. So I don't think that it's a situation where EG and Golden Guardians leaving will bring more sponsorship dollars into the remaining 8 teams through the league. Obviously, one could argue there's less sponsors that you guys can work with directly. There's less competition in the market for those, but yeah. All right, I'm trying to think if there are other questions I have.
At least you could argue. Oh, he's back. No, we lost you for a long spiel there. So I tried to save you, and then I probably talked to everybody. We'll see how this sounds on the recording.
Sure.
I was saying, while Steve might not reap any benefits from that, if there's fewer minimum guarantees to pay out from Riot, they're saving some Skrilla from having to pay teams that don't want to be there who field minimum guaranteed rosters with like one coach and like whatever the minimum requirements are. And then maybe, who knows how the budgets are already aligned, but maybe that's some money that they can use for other things. Who knows? I don't know. That's kind of like the copium angle, I think, if you're talking about like potential positives from this. Because otherwise it does just like in the short term feel pretty bad. Yeah.
I don't know if there are any questions you have for Steve, Mark, or if Twitch chat wants to shout anything out, because I think I have. It's hard because I've been thinking about this for the past I don't know, a couple days now, so I've sort of thought through a lot of the stuff. But if there are things that we're not hitting, I'd love to hear about that. But I don't know if you have anything, Mark.
No, I mean, I think the timing was some of the like. It's always good to hear team side from these things from like other orgs. No offense to the teams who tweeted out the like almost like thoughts and prayers ask tweets to GG and EG, which felt like really weird. I'd much rather hear like the guts of it from Steve or someone.
Steve, everybody wants to know what your roster is, and I think it's 4 p.m.
Yeah, leak it.
So yeah.
It just hit 4, so Steve, I'm sure you already had all those emails queued up to be sent out with the contract.
That's how it works every time. Yeah, you just have them all ready to go, and then you just hit sign.
Ooh. Okay, you can answer the Twitch chat if you want about like, do you have your roster yet? But a follow-up question is like, do you know if like this last second change has like changed how the verbal agreements have, because like I think we have a call later about verbal agreements, but like has this shakeup of like suddenly Licorice is free now, like does this change it for a lot of teams, do you think, or is it like a little too late?
I think that's actually a really good question. I wish I haven't done the diligence on this, but let's think about that for a second. how many players were on EG and GG, right? Both their main team plus any subs. And then of those total amount of players, how many had contracts expiring today? And how many of them had contracts that went into next year? And then of those, how many reach verbal agreements potentially, right? So we can kind of quantify the situation, so to speak. And I don't know the answer to that, but my guess is this is the only one that I heard a lot about, which was jojo, right, with EG. And so I know there was like a ton of conversations about jojo. And so that's the one that comes to mind, but I know that there's other players affected. So, it just helps it from going and being about like all these players to like, oh, we're talking about 4 players or 2 players or whatever it might be. And I haven't dug into each of the names to figure out how many folks have been affected.
Yeah, I mean, Licorice tweeted about how he thought up until today that he was going to be playing for Golden Guardians next year, and so I don't think that he necessarily was running around looking for a team. So I think that's a big part of it, is that a lot of people are curious where, if there's like, if Licorice is just shit out of luck, if like the 8 teams are like, well, we already made our plans, sorry buddy, or if there's an opportunity for him to find something, and other players in his position, I guess I should say, because it's not just Licorice.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. So for Licorice, for example, if he was signed multi-year and then found out and thought he was going to be playing, that really sucks, right?
Yeah.
And he found out today. And he basically missed a few weeks during an off season. And I don't know if he had permission or didn't have permission to seek other teams. Jojo, on the other hand, he was allowed to talk to teams and he spoke with a bunch of teams, right?
Yeah.
So like nothing, he didn't lose out in the off season because EG got sold, like, or is out, I mean. So
Sure.
like, it's all contextual. It depends on the player.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's also just less spots too for like re-signing. So like, I know Revenge has tweeted a similar thing where like, I like Revenge, I like Licorice. It would suck to see neither of them in there because I think they're both, top 6, top 8, top laners in the league, like from last year. I know there's fresh blood like Generous Sniper and stuff who I also want to see in the league, but definitely sucks for them. I know people are talking about Stixay as well. Like it sounds like Huhi and River found other teams, and yeah, I thought I saw Ayla and Jojo. I don't remember if I'm tripping though, but I could have sworn I saw a rumor floating around about him. But yeah, some of the other guys, it's just like what happens to them and stuff.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, hopefully it was the case where. I was just going to say, hopefully it's the case where both all the players on EG and all the players on Golden Guardians were allowed to explore opportunities before today. And I don't know if that is true or not true. I really don't. But if it is true, that is at least better than the alternative. So,
yeah. I totally get you. I do, not to put you on the spot or whatever, but I have to ask because today the contract database updated, and it said that I believe your former general manager was no longer, like, that contract has expired. I shouldn't say former because I'm asking, I guess, if he is your former, but I guess he was listed maybe as a coach, but Dodo has been removed from Team Liquid according to the database update. So I don't know if you can say if you're making changes in the GM or coaching role based off of this public announcement or public information.
No, Dodo's with TL. I don't know if some paperwork didn't get signed and submitted or something, but
He's writing a follow-up email right now.
Yeah, like what the fuck?
Yeah.
By the way,
I'm using
Dodo sent you an email actually a week ago saying he quit and you missed it.
Yeah.
Yeah, what the hell?
Yeah. So yeah, I mean according to, because I use a Twitter account that scans the contract database, and it said that Dodo has been removed from Team Liquid and that his contract end date was the day after Worlds 2023. So I think it just automatically lapsed, and maybe, I don't know if there was a contract that needs to be updated or whatever, but I'm happy to let you know that perhaps you have some emails you need to send.
Okay. Well, thank you. Well, yeah, I'll figure that out. It looks like a paperwork issue.
Okay, cool. All right. Well, either way, thank you. I think we were going to try to get some other calls, but I do appreciate you calling in and sharing your take. I don't know
Yeah.
if you have any final thoughts or anything else that you wanted to mention while you were on here.
Yeah. Final thoughts. I would just say, well, first off, I love being on the show. I think you run a great program with Mark. So thanks for continuing to do this, especially when you're traveling. It's awesome.
Thank you.
There's not many times where like the community comes together with folks in the space and just talks live. I think, keep it up. And then I'll just say, I am really supportive of the change, from overall. Like, it does suck that folks will, of course, lose their jobs going into next split, but from a very macro perspective, I think this will be healthy for the league. It will be good to have all the teams that are in it committed to its future and its growth. And yeah, I'm excited for 2024 and beyond. And I really do believe Riot when they say they're committed to the LCS and the future of League of Legends. And just piggybacking off of the viewership from Worlds, like, League is still huge, and so we can't walk away. I think it's the highest viewership it's ever been, excluding China. So, like, we sometimes forget, we get lost into this tunnel vision with LCS, but when you scope it out, like, League is still very healthy, and so we're here to stay.
Awesome.
And I'll share more about our roster soon.
All right. How soon?
I don't know. I have to check with our content teams. I'm sure they have stuff brewing. I don't want to say anything or do anything.
You're more of a whole your content team than leaking something to Travis right now.
Yeah.
Should I leak some? I could leak. Yeah, can I leak one? Actually, let me just say, can I? Let me ask my team if you can give me 5 seconds.
Sure.
Let me see if I can leak one.
Is there any? There's some fresh ink that he's checking to make sure is actually on the parchment, and that the content team is.
He's looking through.
I'm actually in my Slack, right? I'm in my Slack, and I just said, "Can I leak? Insert here."
You better not leak something lame like Core JJ, where we're all like, "Yeah, he's still fucking there." Of course, Steve.
He's like, guys, after his departure earlier today, I'm happy to announce we've re-signed Dodo. He's rejoining the team.
Dodo was testing.
All right, I got it. Everyone said yes, do it, yes. Okay.
Oh boy.
So, okay, so now I've built it up, and I feel like everyone's gonna be like wah wah. But okay, so here's a leak. I'll give one. As many of you know, last season the teams were offered the ability to exit Academy. And I think 8 of the 10 teams decided not to field Academy rosters for the summer split. And at that time, we didn't make a commitment on whether or not we were going to be continuing in 2024. But especially after NRG and the run that they did at Worlds, which I thought was phenomenal, we need to double down on the Academy program and the path to pro, and residents and their ability to come and play at LCS. And we don't want to take our foot off that. So we're going to be committed to Academy next year.
Hey, that's great news, Steve.
I'm
honestly very excited about that.
Yeah, I will say that's not the sexiest thing that I'm sure people were waiting for, Umpty or whatever, Showmaker, whatever things that people have been speculating on. But in terms of importance, I will say that's actually more important than any of those other names to like the broader ecosystem. So I'm really happy to hear that.
Yeah, no, I think a lot of people, I mean, Twitch chat's getting really excited about it. I was worried they were going to be like, but no, I think especially in this year, people realize how significant that is. So I really appreciate you announcing that, Steve.
Who knows 100% if Harry would have bounced back or not, but at the very least, narratively, you can say, hey, fucking your Academy team got you to Worlds this year by having that easy substitution available to test out in the middle of the split.
Yeah, that is 100% accurate. It's very true. All right. Well, thank you so much for having me on. As always, I'll see you guys soon. Safe travels, Travis. And yeah, thanks, guys.
Yeah, see you later.
Bye.
Awesome. Hey, thanks again to Steve for coming on. I think that was a really cool kind of special drop in, and some cool news coming in. So that's really good.
Yeah, I think in the conversation of teams committed or not committed or whatever, like at least Steve puts the opposite of money where his mouth, puts the effort where his mouth is. I don't know how to say this, but he shows up. We watched a lot of Bachelor, me and Ashley, and that's like a common meme phrase for like he shows up. And so I'm actually really glad that Steve did that.
Yeah, I think that's really cool too, especially because like the funny thing is Steve was publicly in support of removing the academy requirement this year. And I see this not because I want to call him out for any kind of hypocrisy or anything like that, but I think it is nice that he has, even if at times been personally skeptical of academy, continued to support the academy team, and then recommitted this year in light of, I'm sure, the APA stuff, and also the teams that are departing, and as he mentioned, NRG's run and all that stuff. I think it's always really cool to see somebody kind of reflect on all this stuff and get excited about it. So, I think that is super cool. So, thank you to Steve for coming on. And I think it's a great time, given that Steve was just on, to talk about Alienware, our sponsor for today's show. Guess what, guys? Alienware's Black Friday sales are here. It's the biggest sale of the year. You got to go check it out. I'm putting the link into the Twitch chat right now. They have discounts on the M16, the M18, the X16, the R15, the R16, a bunch of accessory products. It's super cool to see them coming out with these big sales. Really, really recommend you go check out all of their sales and their big thing, because I mean, this is the time of year. I know a lot of people realize that if you really want to get that really great deal on a product, that the Black Friday, the holiday time, all that stuff is the time to secure something, a system for yourself, or a new accessory, maybe a new monitor. And I cannot recommend enough that you head over to this link, which I am sharing here, and we will also make sure to put into the description of YouTube and the podcast links and all that stuff, because going through this link, and especially if you end up, this will bring you directly to the PC deals and their system deals, but especially if you end up purchasing a product, please let me know in Discord or Twitter or any of these different ways that you can contact me that you did, because I love to share that back with Alienware so that they know that this is something that you've done, that you've heard about it on the show, and you've decided to pick up something. But again, really great deals on, for instance, the brand new R16 gaming desktop, which I have at home and I've been using. They sent me one. We've done some content around that you've probably seen already, but also on things like the X16, the M16, these notebooks, which are just fantastic machines. The M18, which I've been highlighting a ton to all of you. We brought it with us to Korea. It's been a fantastic time to work with them this year, as with the previous years, but also it's a fantastic time for you to go check out their deals during the holidays. So please go check out Alienware stuff. Again, I know you guys love their stuff. Now's a great time to go pick it up. Thank you to Alienware for sponsoring the show. All right. We want to get on to the next caller?
Yeah, we definitely got to go pretty quick. I pulled a bunch of people not ready for Steve to hijack the show for a little bit. I sent you the same message in Skype. Also, breaking news on Twitter, Gen G has exploded. Doran, Peanut, Chovy, and Delight are all free agents and probably gone. Only Pays is going to remain. Also, all their coaches are gone. Crazy.
How many of those players are coming to North America for a year?
All of them.
Oh,
but on different teams.
Breaking news. Mark is breaking on in live and free agency that all of Gen G's players are coming to different teams in the LCS.
Uh-huh. All of them get one cookie. We're all sharing one Gen G cookie.
Wow, that's fantastic. Thank you, Gen G, supporting the LCS. They heard the news today, and they decided to transfer all their players over to the LCS. That's very generous of them.
TL Chovy? Yeah, wait, get Steve back on here. Hey, Steve.
Yeah, Steve saw the news, and that's why he rushed off the show. He's like, okay, it's been great talking to you guys. Got to go.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
all right. Anyway, you want to go grab the next caller?
yeah.
All right. Um, there we go. Portillo says, I feel like the Eastern teams always announce that their their contracts are up, but not that they are departing with them. So Portillo in the chat perhaps suggesting that maybe they're not all leaving. I mean, I think what does happen in the East is that you do see more teams or more players test the free agency waters. So especially in a year like this. All right, we got hexblast here. Hexblast, where are you calling from?
San Francisco, California.
And what do you want to talk about on the show?
My take is that the biggest loss from the two downsized teams is Inero and Kelsey Moser. They've proven to be two of the few people in NA capable of building winning rosters consistently, and it's a real shame that they won't be able to do that next year.
Well, I guess you're right that they won't be able to roster build right now because the rosters have probably already been built. But I really hope both of those people, who I consider both of them friends, and really great individuals who care deeply about the space, about North American talent, about building rosters, and about the health of the league. I really hope both of them continue to find positions within the space. They're incredibly talented individuals. Um, and Arrow said something really mean to me in my Twitch chat earlier today, and he said he can say whatever he wants about me now that he's not doesn't have a job in the space. But I really hope that he gets a job in the space so that he can be nice to me again. But yeah, I agree with this take a lot. I don't know if you want to expand on it at all, caller, or should we just dive in on it?
Yeah, I mean, one part of it is they're consistently building rosters with not a lot of money, so they don't have a lot to throw around. They consistently bring people up from academy and really take advantage of that pipeline. And yeah,
Yeah, I think they're two, like Travis said, people who are they're real ones. There's some real ones right there. I think Anero's actually a fraud, and that's why as soon as he got removed from the coaching position, that the team finally started doing well. So
True.
he probably should stay away from coaching or anything. But no, I like Inero a lot, and I think Kelsey as well. Like, she did academy for a little bit, if people don't know, like helping produce it, and she was actually really good at that. Like, I had a couple of meetings with her quickly where we or not quickly, like there were a couple of days where I was doing academy and like working with her. I was like, oh shit, she can kind of do whatever she wants in this space, and I think she would probably be successful at it. So yeah, I don't know. I hope both of them land on their feet, but like I'm honestly like not as worried about them in almost a sense because I actually have so much faith in their abilities.
Well, my faith in their abilities is why I'm worried about them, Mark. I don't know if you know how great our system is at finding great talent and working with them, but I think their high levels of competency should be a concern for them in finding work moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, they'll be fine.
Okay. All right.
They'll be fine.
Kind of a quick call because Mark and I just both really agree with you, but I do appreciate the call, Hexblast, because I think it's worth mentioning. Is there anything else you want to add before we I give you your shoutouts? Hexblast?
no, I think that's good.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for the call, and go ahead and give your shoutouts if you have any.
I guess shout out to you, Travis, for having that interview with John Needham ready to go as soon as the news broke about the teams going away. Thank you so much for keeping us abreast of everything that's going on in the scene.
Yeah, of course. I'm traveling. I'm on 2 Brandon Sanderson panels tonight at Dragonsteel. Shout out to anybody who's here, but I still need to talk about free agency and huge news. So I couldn't stop myself even if I wanted to. So thank you so much. All right. We're on to
Shout out to the caller for dropping a breast out of nowhere, having a good mastery of the English language.
the way you. Okay, never mind. Thank you to El Davo. Numi goes rar. Thank you for gifting a sub. Boopel Snoot, Zemelkai, Bomber, Alex Bad, Element with the 10 gifted subs. Thank you, Element. And Flyrite, thank you for the 5 months. Dropping a breast out of nowhere. You know, it's always good when somebody drops a breast out of nowhere. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, everybody, for the subs. Really do appreciate it. It has been a quieter free agency period for me content-wise because I've been bouncing around to Worlds and back and all that. It's just been harder to capitalize on free agency, so I do really appreciate all the support. Our next caller is here. Caller, where are you calling from, and what's your name?
I'm calling from Ontario, Canada.
What do you want to talk about on the show?
So my take is that Riot not giving the 2 free spots that just opened up to the top 2 NACL teams, either like they do in Valorant or even just temporarily for a split or 2 while they look for other buyers, is only going to hurt the LCS in the long run.
Only going to hurt. Okay, why is it going to hurt?
Because obviously as an outside perspective, it looks really bad if you're 2 teams 1 out and you're just downsizing. But I also think it's going to really hurt like the LCS ecosystem of new players wanting and trying to get into LCS. They're now going to see they have even fewer spots than they did before. And obviously, like with Riot not throwing a bone to NACL teams that are winning, I think a lot of people will see like, well, what's the point?
I mean, I hope that people realize that this situation is kind of a last minute thing, and understand that it's like a unique circumstance, right? Where it's not just like, oh, Riot decided, hey, we're going to go to 8 teams and fuck any other options. That it's more like we don't have enough time to go through a whole promotion process and do all that type of stuff. I mean, for instance, Disguised Toast's roster is already dedicated to other teams, based off of reporting that's been done about where those players are going. So it's not like that roster itself was able to promote directly up. I also think that, and I mean no disrespect to either of the 2 organizations that place at the top of the NACL, but I also think that it's important for Riot to do a little due diligence around the organizations coming in the space. I realize that's ironic to say at a time where their previous due diligence has led us to organizations that are in this position, but I don't think that you want to just sort of YOLO grab 2 organizations on a Monday morning. I also just think like the time window with the holidays and everything come up, it's a very short window to feasibly solve for all this stuff. So I do think, like, I'm very interested to hear, hey, Riot, what are your plans for making sure that players continue to have positions in the league, and all that type of stuff? But I don't fault them for not immediately promoting 2 teams. I don't know if you want to come at me with any rebuttals here, but I'm open to them.
I think it's fair, but also LCS starts mid-January.
Yes.
I don't remember so that gives them like 2 months to like even say, hey, these 2 teams won out. We're going to spend the next 2 or so weeks figuring out what we're going to do.
Well, it's less.
Just right out the gate.
It's less because like this week is Thanksgiving week. Then Riot closes for like 10 days or something like that during the holidays. And quite frankly, every business becomes super slow around that time. And we're already at the 20th, so.
I even think like it's less of a Riot concern and more like, you know, like I trust Toast to have his heart 100% in the right place, but like the tier 2 scene is not operating anything like LCS at this point. Like at least Academy, you had like coaches and they used to be on site. It's like I think Toast, like all those guys played remote. Like they'd have to find housing, they'd have to like sign all new contracts with teams and play or with the players. They'd have to like sign some sorts of contracts, even if it is like a temporary promotion contract. Like I don't think Riot has drafted any language there, and then at least not. I mean, maybe they can use like a boilerplate from Valorant and copy and paste it over, but like as far as I know, there's going to need to be like details sprinkled out or fixed out, and then like Toast org should take that to lawyers, and then they should also like review it to make sure that the thing that they're signing is good for them. And like Travis said, this is not like, you know, there's plenty of players I think for them to sign. I actually think that's like the least hard part. It's a lot more like the logistics of like actually getting up and going. Like I think the Riot machine has turned over teams in short enough periods of time before like the Riot side would do just fine with this time period. But it's more like, you know, how are you going to find some partners to take those spots and operate at an effective level that is not just like bad. It's hard.
The other complication is you have a league of 8 teams that have paid a tremendous amount of money to enter and have agreements that sort of bind them all into the same system and all this stuff. It's weird, not weird. It is difficult and complicated to then say, hey guys, we're going to give these two folks who had no idea what they were competing for 2 spots in the same system. Like, there's just a lot of
They don't have to
ramifications
pay.
that come out of that. I'm not saying that you can't do that. I'm just saying it's complicated. And so again, with all these timelines and all that, I don't think it's necessarily feasible for them to grab 2 NACL teams and plop them in. But yeah, I'm super fascinated to see how they handle all this next year. Because I will agree that like what I was saying on stream earlier before Mark was here was the current NACL system was the product of this emergency vote where Riot let these teams out of their obligations to the academy, so that they would definitely be in a better place and could stick around for longer, right? Right? Anyway, they let them out of this, and so the NACL right now is this weird kind of bastardized last minute hodgepodge of what can we put together, right? Um, this is not the equivalent of, oh, we spent a lot of time thinking about the best optimal situation on how to do this. And so I really hope to see between now and the start of the season changes to the NACL that better are optimized for the current reality of what the system looks like and all that. So we will see what ends up happening, but I I don't know. So that's where I agree with you. Is they need to make sure that NACL is in a much better place than perhaps it is right now. Because if they're just roll forward these like last minute model, that's going to be pretty disappointing to me. So, hey, thanks for the call. Anything you want to shout out before we say goodbye?
Shout out Alienware and Only One, and shout out you two for hosting.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the call, and we'll catch you next time.
Thank you. Have a good day.
All right. You want to go grab another caller?
Yeah.
Off he goes. Thank you to Spawn the Caster, who's subbing probably because he found out he gets to keep his job, in the league as Steve announced the academy continuing on. Carpezy, thank you for the prime. MK the one, thank you. Shake and Bake and Fly Right. Thank you everybody for the subs. I cannot express enough how much direct contributions from the audience help with offsetting a lot of the costs that we have whenever we're creating content and doing all this stuff. We're just down a lot on sponsor stuff year over year, so it is very much appreciated. Mark is back with our next caller. Caller, where are you calling from, and what's your name?
Hey, I'm sogeking. I'm calling from Washington D.C. area.
Sorry, what was your name one more time? You kind of cut out.
sogeking.
Sogeking. Okay, what do you want to talk about on the show?
Yeah, so the free agency is too lax, and it needs to have explicit rules to protect the players. And this is from the context of verbal agreements and all the verbal agreements that are being leaked. Coming from the average viewer, in my perspective, leaking like free agency information damages the opportunities of like other players that may have had like less time to explore some options. For example, people coming from Worlds or like Licorice who already committed to Golden Guardians and now has to scramble to find a team. And even in another case where you have someone who committed to a verbal agreement and now they're interested in taking someone like Licorice. So it's all very muddled, and I think there should be more rules that like crack down on some of that.
So sorry, can you clarify a little bit? You're saying the leaking is the issue?
For the most part, yeah.
Can you?
I mean,
I guess I'm a little confused because how is it that the leaking is causing the issue? Because really, like they're just making what has already happened public, right?
Yeah, so I think there should be some kind of NDAs that prevent that from happening. So players who have less time to explore options have the opportunity to do so. Maybe that could be having a shorter window of agents or something like that.
Well, I think Travis's point is that there's a disconnect between, leaking and what you want to stop, which is verbal agreements from happening because they happen too quickly, and then there's not like a proper free agency window. But to Travis's point, regardless of if it leaked or not, let's say Jojo had a handshake deal with Jack that he was going to C9 as soon as free agency hits. Hypothetically, I don't know, but that's like, it's reported that he's going there. And so, like, regardless if that's reported or not, that deal exists, and there's no opportunities for C9's mid laner. For other people to reach out to Jack and say, hey, let's say Chovy is really excited about C9. He would have gone there if he just could have talked to Jack before, but he was busy being a successful player for the most part, and just couldn't find time until proper free agency hit.
Yeah, so let me give a quick rundown, because I think especially for, and I'm not saying, Collier, that this is you, but I think other folks watching might not understand what happens. So because players cannot be signed until the day that free agency begins, which is today, a short time ago, Riot's rules do not actually allow you to actually like contractually agree to anything. Like, verbal agreements basically mean, hey, later on I'm going to agree on paper legally to join your team. But they're not binding, because they can't be, because at the moment you have any kind of binding agreement, you are in violation of Riot's rule set, because free agency has not started. You are not actually within their rule set allowed to sign a contract or agree to anything. So that is what leads us to this situation where, everybody's agreeing to all this stuff, so that the moment free agency opens, they are actually able to sign something. I'm trying to think of what I would want to see changed. I mean, I think right now it's actually kind of okay. You're never going to be able to actually stop people from talking and having these conversations. They'll just be more low key about it if you do this. So I don't know, Mark, do you have any thoughts on this?
No, I mean, it's kind of an unsolvable problem to that point. Like, I think you can disincentivize it if there was like harsher and stricter penalties of if you're caught doing it. And so if it leaks, then Riot could investigate that, hey, you were engaging in contract negotiations outside the allotted window. We're going to, slap your wrist, and both sides are going to pay a fine, or whoever they find guilty pays a fine, kind of thing. I think you could try and do some of that. And I think, to Travis's point, like, I think people would still do it and just like shut up more. Maybe that's still a win. I don't know. But yeah, I think I understand where sogeking's coming from about the things he doesn't like about it. And I kind of agree that it's like kind of annoying when free agency like Travis can put out a list of where everyone's going and get it like 95% right a week before free agency is going to come out or something. And lots of people are doing that, So like, yeah, that's not cool. But also, I don't know how to fix it, because people are always going to do that. And every sport has this. Every sport that has a free agency window has a bunch of handshake deals ready to go. And then as soon as, the free agency windows hit, there's people getting contracts sent their way, which seem to have very agreeable terms somehow.
Yeah, and I don't think that like the quote unquote leaking really changes anything. Like, the thing that happened with Licorice is a very unique problem, right? Like, we've never really had this issue before, because we've never been in this problem or this situation before, where you have two teams that decide they don't literally want to participate anymore within a very short window before the start of free agency starts. So I kind of disagree that this is the problem that you think it is, but I can understand why it would feel bad, where you're like, wait, Licorice didn't even get a chance yet. In reality, like in any other offseason, he would have, or he would just be playing on Golden Guardians. And so this problem is more representative of the state of things than it is sort of a problem with the system as a whole, I would say. So, Cheesy Baller says, what about tampering rules? Do those not work? Yeah, tampering, if a player has been given permission to talk to teams, it's not tampering.
Yeah. So most of these leaks are with players who, even if it's not reported, most of them have been given permission. Like EG probably knew that they were trying to leave / we're going to have a small budget and they weren't going to be able to outbid JoJo come free agency. So they say, hey, you're allowed to talk to teams, before free agency starts, and then those conversations begin. So it's not really tampering.
Yeah. Okay. So thanks so much, caller, for the call. Anything you want to shout out before we go into a quick break?
Sure. Shout out to you, Travis and Mark, and love the MTG content. I hope you can pivot more into that as well. And shout out to Cole, Z, and Hunter.
I agree, Mark, that we should pivot more into MTG content. What do you think of that?
You know what? Shut it down. Fuck the next 3 callers that we have lined up. We're talking about Magic the Gathering right now.
Finally! I have been waiting all year for Mark to say just like that. Guys, if you got to take on Ixalan, what do you think of the hottest new commanders from the new set? Are these precons representative of the new value that we can expect going forward?
Teams that talk about entities that are walking corpses in this ecosystem. Travis Gafford is one of them.
Thanks so much for the call, caller. We'll catch you next time.
Thank you.
He has been waiting to jump ship off Hotline League. 2 quick things following off on that. What one person was saying, like, what would you do with the fines? I think you almost always, in a fine situation, given our environment, you would like just send them to other teams, or like, you reappropriate them and somehow like they go to NACL, or like, I don't fucking care. But like,
they usually go to charity.
Line,
to be clear.
Yeah. Well, that's what they typically do. They go to charity, but like, I think we're a charity at this point.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah. Like, I think we should just keep it in house.
I think there's a conflict of interest if teams are incentivized to try to catch each other in some sort of issue. So I don't know, man. That sounds fun.
That sounds kind of fun, though. Like, Among Us is going on IRL with contract negotiations.
Yeah.
The other thing quickly was I saw a conversation that was like on Reddit about people like blaming the journalists for like a leak is like a cover for journalists to say something with unclear sources or something. And that was just like, I want to say quickly, like that's not what a leak is. A leak is private information becoming public. And like sometimes journalists are wrong, but usually what happens is like they say something that's like true when they say it, and then like another verbal thing breaks down, and then suddenly there's a new opportunity, and then like something changes. It's like not this like crazy conspiracy theory. It's reported as the leak or it's a verbal agreement was the other thing that people were going after. Like it's a verbal agreement because they're contractually not allowed to sign anything yet. So it's a verbal agreement.
Actually, that reminds me of something. Here's a great example of that. So a couple of weeks ago, I'd heard from at least one place with other people telling me they had heard it too, that EG's slot was probably going to be sold to Luminosity or the entity that owns Luminosity. At the time, I could have come out and said, hey, a source has told me, and many others have heard this similar story, that EG's LCS slot is going to be sold to, I think it's Enthusiast Gaming that owns Luminosity. And at the time, that would have been accurate information. And then if this happened, everybody would slam me and be like, Travis was fucking wrong all the time. They were always just going to do this instead. When in reality, there's a very good chance that the reason we ended up in this situation is because maybe EG was looking to sell. I don't know. This is just what I'd heard, right, from folks that this was maybe a thing that was happening. And then maybe that sell fell through, and so EG was like, well, we have no plans to participate because of this. And then that could have been one of the bricks that fell, or dominoes that fell, that led us to this situation. So, like, I appreciate you pointing that out, Mark, because I think people just don't always understand how this works and like how information functions. Like something that gets reported one day could end up being true or end up no longer being true the next. That doesn't mean that the reporter just leaked something that was wrong or is getting clicks or something like that. It's just people don't know how it works. So yeah, thank you to Carpezy, Soar Through Space, Bowen Chung for the 1,000 bits, Dan297, and Stealth Black. Thank you, everybody. We're going to take a quick break to talk about Only One. So Only One partnering with us for this show. Really appreciate them with this opportunity. Not a sponsor. So, when you're hearing the following here, don't think that I'm getting paid to say this. Is in fact quite the opposite. This is a situation where I mentioned at the start of the show, but for those that are just tuning in now, I want to start figuring out some cool ways to work on the sponsor stuff where if we don't have a sponsor slot, we can donate that or do some sort of charitable thing or partner with a nonprofit, because I think, hey, if esports winter is going to be this good this way, maybe we can figure out something that we can do in the short term. Oh, Mark, we're doing the second brand read right now, so um, so that's just how we ended up in this position with only one. And maybe you're asking, what is only one? Well, they are, as I pull up my notes, which have disappeared from me. Oh, here we go. They are a nonprofit which was started by National Geographic photographers who wanted to protect the ocean in a meaningful way, not just picking up trash, but also communicating with people in power to create high-level protections. And so what we are promoting today, and what this link is, if you see it in the chat, you can get it to pop up by doing !only one, but we'll also have the link in the description. It is a petition that is being created, that has been created with the help of experts in environmental science and policy. And the petition is to try to get people in positions of power and influence politically and otherwise to help protect 30% of the oceans by 2030. So signing this petition, by the way, takes less than 30 seconds and is the highest impact action an individual can take towards helping the planet. And this petition, signing a petition takes less than 30 seconds and is the highest impact action an individual can take towards helping the planet. And the petition will be shared with world leaders attending the UN's COP28 in Dubai next month. So one cool thing that they also told me was that if I pull up the exact thing here, they told me that if we are able to get 1,000 plus signatures through this, that they would plant 50 mangrove trees in TGI's name. So we are at 1,300 viewers right now. I think we should be able to do this if we can get a bunch of folks to do it. I did see, I'm trying to find where I had that shared with me previously, but I do know that you can opt into their newsletters. It's not a thing where if you sign this, you're going to start getting slammed with a bunch of emails or anything like that you don't want. I don't think that there's really any downside to participating in this. If you really want to be a part of telling world leaders to protect 30% of the ocean by 2030. So I'm excited to be able to do something with Hotline League where, in esports winter, as we don't have as many brands, I think, hey, being able to go out there and help promote really cool initiatives like this is great. So again, thank you to Only One for the opportunity to participate in this. And thank you to everybody who does this. Again, I don't know if we'll be able to hit 1,000 signatures, but I love to think that we can, given that we have many thousands of people that listen and watch the show every week. So please check out that link, go sign the petition, and tell world leaders to protect 30% of the ocean by 2030. This thing is important. Thanks again to Only One. All right, our caller is here. Caller, what's your name and where are you from?
My name's Shake and Bake, and I'm from Fairbanks, Alaska.
Shake and Bake, thanks for calling. What would you like to talk about on the show?
It's kind of been touched on, but I was saying I think John kind of downplays how much losing the two teams actually hurts the LCS and the owners. And he kind of downplayed the tier 2 scene, like how it's kind of progressing and everything when it's really not. Kind of seems like a downward slide. So that's kind of my take.
Hey, what are your big things that you think of whenever you consider losing the two teams?
Well, let's say they want to add two teams next year. Those teams are going to have a hard time gaining traction, like getting the fans. It takes a little bit to get established and get all the viewers and the backing, the supporters. And I just think it's going to be really hard for two teams to come in and kind of capture that. Or if teams were, fans of GG or EG, they're just going to walk away and feel kind of slighted. They're like, well, if I get attached to this team, they're just going to leave eventually.
Yeah, I mean, I
Um,
would feel that way if I felt like Golden Guardians and EG had a huge amount of fans, and I'm not saying that they didn't, and I'm not trying to be dismissive of the fans that they did have, but I don't. I think that like the league has done a poor job for a while of giving fans assurances that rooting for a team, a roster, or a player is something that they will be able to do again next year. And so I agree that like this is a problem, but I don't think that perhaps it changes anything. And I hope that like moving forward they're able to better rectify this, right? Because I don't think that I think there was already a fairly large lack of faith from fans in the stability of brands, players, rosters, etc. in the space.
yeah, I think. I mean, I don't like fully disagree with the caller because I think like Golden Guardians and EG both did decent this year. I think there's a lot of problems with EG that people have. John himself saying that have been well documented was a got a little grin out of me when he said there's well documented problems with EG. But yeah, I think like Golden Guardians had not put a very put a compelling product on the Rift for like the 3 of the 4 years that they were here, and this was kind of the first time they managed to do that. I think they sometimes sold a good line about like developing North American talent, and I was always like I wanted to believe in them, but they had their budget cut pretty aggressively the first time they did manage to build a good team, and then immediately like weren't allowed to do that. And it sounds like this year, even if they had stuck around, they would have gotten budget cut anyways. And like a lot of people memed Golden Guardians before this year for just always being a pretty weak team. So while it does suck for like this particular group of players, and the fact that I think a lot of people on the ground floor, really do care about the team, like Inero and those sorts of people. But like, yeah, it's. I mean, it does suck for fans if you were a fan of these teams to see them go. But I think the bigger thing is again, like what can you do with this like space supposedly to make it easier to be a fan in the future, because it seems like a struggle right now.
Agreed.
I'm being revisionist about what?
It
Mark's
just seems
arguing with
like
Twitch chat again.
Oh wait, they said 100 Thieves literally bought their entire roster, Mark. Yes, because Golden Guardians wasn't going to spend anything to keep them. This is a well-known documented fact, is it not? Am I tripping?
No, well, so I think what they're taking issue with was you're suggesting that Golden Guardians was only able to field a compelling roster this year for the first time. And I agree with the idea that they have done it in previous years, but obviously they
Well,
didn't have the results that they did this year.
I said that they developed rosters. And I think that is cool, and I bought in, but then they could never keep that developed roster. So like the one time prior to this year that they did develop a compelling roster, they immediately lost it from the budget. So you're right. I should clarify when I say they didn't keep it. They didn't keep a compelling roster, because the next year immediately they went back to 10th place, like back to back or whatever it was. So
yeah.
And I don't blame the staff or the players. I'm just saying that like, you develop good players. Of course, people are going to want more money. And like, what's your plan if you can't ever keep the players that you were able to develop? Of course that becomes a problem.
Yeah. Yeah, I just don't. I will agree John is downplaying the immediate impacts of this, especially when it relates to questions around, hey, if you want to be a pro player in North America, there's half as many jobs this year as there were last year. When you factor in academy and all that stuff as well. So I do agree with that. I am sad that Golden Guardians and AG are leaving the league. I am not sad that we're moving to 8 teams. And I'm happy to keep talking about that with you, caller, if you have like a rebuttal to anything that we've been saying.
No, I mean, I agree with all the points you're making. It just seems kind of like he put on his best PR face and he's like, yeah, everything's going great. We've got tier 2 going and everything, when really it's kind of been on a downward trend. You can kind of skim over it. And
yeah, I think, okay, on the PR front, I think I agree with that, because I think Needham tries to be, look, he's like a leader of his entire esports organization. People in those positions are used to sort of talking to the people that work with them and trying to put on a brave face. And I think that is what he is trying to do. I'm not trying to make excuses for him. I'm just sort of like, I am not surprised that this is his approach to communication with the community, because he doesn't, everybody says LCS is dying, LCS is dying. His natural impulse in these moments is to say, like, guys, it's going to be fine. We're going to figure it out, blah, blah, blah. Especially because I do think he believes that they are going to figure out and that the LCS will survive. But I agree that it would probably, from a communication standpoint, behoove him to be a little more down to earth when it comes to just saying, like, yeah, we totally know this year has sucked for LCS fans. We went into this year thinking that things were going to be a lot better. We did have a lot of faith that the time change would work and that viewership would be up. We had a lot of things that happened, including the academy changes, losing a commissioner, having this walkout, which wasn't good for anybody. All these things were not great, and we definitely take onus for a lot of these things, and some of them were a little out of our control, and not all of them were, and we could have done better. But like, obviously, hearing this does not feel great for fans, but we believe that we can make a stronger league with 8 teams and focusing on brands and building all this stuff, even if we understand that this is going to be really painful for certain people in the short term. Like, I think that sounds a little nicer than when people are like, oh man, 2 teams are leaving, and John's like, don't worry, it's better. Like it's just rough, right? There's a bit of a disconnect there, even though I understand where he's coming from. I wish we'd had more time for that interview. They did tell me that it was going to have to be short, but I do wish that I could have done the same sit-down interview I did with him at Chase last year, because I think there are a lot of things to talk about. Riot just loves to do this thing where they don't talk until they're like, no, we've got everything figured out, everything's great, now we can talk about stuff, and I don't think that's always the best strategy.
Well, especially since like a lot of these things are like happening kind of last second. I will say, like, and again, not to like apologize too much for him, but like, I'm glad Riot said anything and did an interview about this, and like, it wasn't just the text thing that he put out, because that would feel, even worse. And historically, Riot's not always like the quickest on their comms, and so like, I agree tonally, like, it sounds a little bright-sidey maybe, but like, there was actually information in the interview that like was interesting to hear, talk about like how fast it was and some like how it went down a little bit. So yeah, like, I agree with what you're saying about like kind of downplaying some of the potential negatives. But like, this wasn't like some super workshopped like PR statement that probably like everyone got to see. So like, I'd rather have someone kind of shooting off the cuff and maybe like missing tone a little bit, but actually providing information in a timely manner to someone than, some of the alternatives we've gotten in the past.
I should say that the turnaround behind the scenes on getting this interview going was very short. So
I'm sure he would have much preferred to just fucking chill, watch the World Championship, clap Faker on the back, say "Way to go, buddy," and like not need to address this shit. Like, I'm sure he was not in a good mood either. I don't know what his mood was before and after the interview, Travis, but I assume he's like, God damn it, kind of.
No, I mean, I don't. Yeah, I don't. I try not to talk too much about off-camera conversations, since folks tend to consider that not part of what's going on. But like, yeah, I would agree. I mean, you could tell he was happy about Worlds, and it's hard to be at Worlds and not be excited about stuff. But like, we were even having conversations where there's that glass wall behind us. We're in that room that we did it in, and we're like, oh, should we go do this like outside so you can see the stage behind and everything? And then it was like, well, this is kind of shitty situation. Like, it's not really worth being like, and look at the party behind us,
Yeah.
And so we ended up kind of doing it that way. Because I mean, I don't. Again, out of all the people who have had a tough situation out of this, John Needham is not high on that list. But I will say that, to your point, like, he's got these final 2 weeks of Worlds. It's all leading up to this great time where you get to see, T1 play Inquiry on their own, and then he finds out in a very short time that like teams are trying to get out of permanent partnership contracts. Like, I don't think the guy is vibing, even if he's trying to seem, as positive as he can on camera. So,
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't.
I feel.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say it's like a lose-lose from his situation, like doing it, because either he comes across as too transparent or comes across as not enough transparent.
I think he could be more transparent. I mean, I think he did a pretty. I was surprised at how transparent he was in that interview, because he did give some timelines on stuff that I thought he wouldn't give, and stuff. He did say more than I expected going into it, but I agree that it's kind of like there's this balance of looking really beaten and making it seem as though like, oh yeah, LCS is dead, and this guy's like lifting the shovel to start, burying the casket, or like seeming as a guy who's ambivalent about it. I will say, call me Riot Shield Gafford. I don't, whatever people want to do, but like in my conversations with Needham and Nas, like these folks they're not happy that the LCS is struggling. Like, even selfishly, folks, like, if you want to think that all they are interested in is like career goals and stuff, this product which they own being such a public disaster throughout this year, because that's pretty much what it was, it's not good for them or their careers, right? It doesn't look like they're doing a good job, etc. Even if I think sometimes some of it is kind of out of their control or the result of decisions that were made many years ago. So, the folks that think that they don't care or whatever, I don't think that's accurate. I think oftentimes they are a little out of touch on stuff, as many executives are when you are so many steps away from a product. And I do disagree with a lot of the decisions that they make. But when I talk to them, I find that it's me, somebody who gives a shit about the league, talking to somebody else who gives a shit about the league, even if we disagree on stuff, similar to the types of conversations I have with callers on the show. I disagree with David Shynock, a frequent Hotline League caller, that the LCS needs to be at a different college every week, doing some sort of roadshow. I might, in the same way I disagree with Nods and Needham, that the LCS should be on Thursdays and Fridays at 2 p.m. It's just, it's, I think, I don't always think they are the villains that folks think that they are, even if we can disagree with a lot of the decisions and hold them accountable for ones that sometimes end up leaving fans or players screwed. So, yeah. Anyway, thank you so much for the call. Anything you want to shout out before we go on to the next caller?
Yeah, shout out Lychigo and Pika Dan and Alienware, of course, and you guys for doing this show.
Yeah, thanks so much for the call. I'll catch you next time.
Thanks.
Travis, we need turbo speed run these next two for you.
So I have to be on a panel in an hour. So if we can get these done in 10 minutes or 15, then I can do a little bounty afterwards, and we'll be good. Czar is 5. Thank you for the prime. Real Celsius, thank you for the 4 months. Jolly Great, thank you for the prime. I'm literally gonna end the show, go do a quick bounty on stream for a couple minutes, and then we're gonna run across from my hotel. Our next caller is here. Caller, what's your name and where are you calling from?
Hi, I'm Justin from Chicagoland, Illinois.
And what do you want to talk about on the show?
So my take is that the 2022-23 T1 roster is the greatest, or like strongest roster we've had in League of Legends.
I'm trying to think. Okay, go ahead and elaborate a little bit, because I kind of want to hear your reasoning here.
Yeah, I discussed this with my friend before the T1 versus Weibo game, and to me, even if they lost finals, I think you could still make this argument. Our qualifications were it had to be the same roster, like no player was subbed out at all. We favored global consistency over regional consistency, and we're only looking at events like the regular season, Worlds, and MSI. So stuff like Kespa Cup, Demacia Cup, or Rift Rivals aren't being focused on.
So do you care about the time frame that you're talking about, or just like, hey, looking at the accomplishments of these 5 guys and like, the peaks that we've seen on the Rift and these sorts of, like, just trying to take it all into account? You think they're like the best 5 ever as a team to do it?
Like you said, within their time frame versus what was the?
Well, like because like a team might peak really fucking hard for like Worlds or something, you know, but then like they didn't do that much before and after, and it seemed like more of a patch thing. And so like I
Yeah.
don't think you would say that that's the best team ever just because they were really good for a 3-month stretch or something.
Yeah. Like when I discussed with my friend, we saw like just that example of teams who won Worlds, then they fell off massively, or like they didn't reach their same heights. But this current iteration of T1 has, like for example, like last year, obviously they got to finals versus DRX, very close finals. Additionally, they did super well in their regular season in the LC, like regular season playoffs in the LCK last year. And then for this year, they did stumble a bit during summer because Faker had to be subbed out. But then they were able to shore it up, and as a result, they were able to win Worlds this year.
So first off, thank you for sharing your methodology, because so many people call in with a take and then they have no methodology for a take like this. And so you literally giving all that, I think that was phenomenal. I wish we had more of that because it gives us at least guidelines and rule sets to look at. What do you think, Mark?
I mean, I'm pretty convinced. I think there's like really insane teams that have happened before and like, you know, had really good players. I think like, oh boy. I think the thing that makes T1 interesting in this conversation is that almost everyone can feel like the star at any point. I think maybe Owner is the biggest like outlier of like maybe not clearly the best. I think don't get me wrong, for Owner fans, like I think he is really good, and you know he like a lot of junglers have highs and lows and stuff like that. But I think the other four just stand out a little bit more. Like obviously Faker speaks for himself. Zeus has been basically best top laner in the world. Like between him, Bin, 369 has been the conversation for 2 years basically now. Keria, people think he's the best player in the world, not just best support. And Gumayushi has had his ups and downs, but like when he's playing well, he's undoubtedly like right up there with the rulers and vipers and you know galas and stuff like that. So like I don't think he's always a 10 out of 10, but again, he's pretty fucking amazing. So people saying Owner legit won them Worlds. Yeah, I'm not saying Owner's bad. Like I think especially his tournament this Worlds was particularly good, but like I would say in the past at times he has been not the. I mean, we're talking about one of the best teams in the world, guys. So I want to be clear. I'm not saying Owner's bad. I'm just saying like I think other stars have shined brighter around him historically on this team, though this World is obviously one of his best times. But yeah,
I think one thing I like about this team and the argument you're making is that we live in we are part of an esport where there's so little roster consistency, right? Like not even in the LCS.
Yeah.
Obviously, I complain about that stuff all the time, but like, how often do you see a team run it back the next year at Worlds with the same lineup, and how often have you seen them do back-to-back finals, right? And so I think that that's one of the big reasons why I would agree with you on this is that like I just want to celebrate like these 5 players and what they accomplished. And if by celebrating them, I'm saying that this is like the best roster that's ever existed, I think that could be fair. Who are there the other big candidates, or who would be in that conversation, Mark?
I think as much as JDG from this year failed at the last moment to literally the world champion, I think you can put them in that consideration at least for almost having the golden road, and even looking good at Worlds. I feel like there's times where like RNG was on the golden road, but by the time they got to Worlds, they were clearly not that great.
Yeah, I think EG had a golden road at one, or got close to it, right? They didn't complete with Worlds or something.
Yeah, I think there's been a couple golden road-esque people who struggled. People talking about G2. Having won MSI, and I think they won both EU splits, and then they were on the Golden Road, and they made it to finals as well that year, right? So
There were 2 other teams we considered, which were Samsung Galaxy, the 2016 to 2018. They ran the same roster, and then G2 for 2019-2020 roster.
Yeah, I mean, if you have to keep that exact window, and because as Travis said, there's a lot of turnover in League. That's a hard window to hit. If you're allowing some flexibility in the window, I would put like IG out there, the World's winning IG, who then won spring, and then they dominated half of MSI before randomly losing to TL, and then like
randomly.
Like,
what are you talking about? We were the better region.
Yeah, man. Yeah, for sure, dude. I really liked peak Showmaker Canyon era stuff too, which is like 2020, I guess. But like, I don't think the problem with a lot of these teams was, no, I think they're incredible. I think like again, no shade to Ghost and Barrel a little bit. I think Barrel maybe a little bit more, but like Ghost, like could you have slotted a lot of people into that team and maybe they would have won? Like he did have an incredible Caitlyn game in the finals, but like it's clearly not how that team like functioned. Nuggery Canyon, Showmaker, Ghost, Barrel. Like Barrel is a GOAT support. He's up there. He's really, really good. He's made, what was it, 3 straight finals or something like that, or 2, or back to back. I think it was 3 actually. 2020, 2021, and 2022.
It was 3.
Yeah. So like I think like Dom 1 2020 is maybe up there too. They're fucking crazy. But yeah, I think the longevity through so many metas for these exact 5 guys makes it a pretty compelling conversation. And probably true. I don't think anyone's...
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. I was gonna say I don't think anyone's clearly better. That it's like not a conversation at least.
Like in general, we favored the longevity of like across like multiple years, or technically 2 years, versus like 1 year this team is super dominant and then they suddenly drop off.
Yeah, because I mean, to be fair as well, like what was it, the 2013 T1 where they won Worlds and then had like the most incredible, I think they went like undefeated or whatever it was in spring that year, and then there wasn't like an MSI for them to go to, but that was also an incredible team. But then they flopped and missed Worlds in summer 2014, and so to that point, like a lot of the times that these roster turnovers that happen that Travis is talking about is because not just like sometimes it is contract stuff and the roster just implodes because contract reasons, but a lot of times as well, the meta changes and they stop having whatever was working isn't working anymore, and then they explode. So it's a little bit of both, and the fact that neither has happened to this team is incredible.
I just random aside, but I just noticed that the Golden Guardians post from earlier today now has the Twitter community notes that disputes it as misleading on it, which I think is funny.
Dude, you ratioed them into the ground with that one.
I mean, I didn't.
You didn't want to, but you did.
Yeah, I didn't. It wasn't. I wasn't meant. Like my take was, Golden Guardians, whoever tweeted that probably had been misled themselves by like management or something, and had just been told to like go post it or something. And that was what they wrote. For context for folks, Golden Guardians wrote this tweet where they announced their departure as like, hey, Riot's decided to move the league to 8, so we've made the difficult decision to leave. When in reality, they moved it to 8 because Golden Guardians made the quote-unquote difficult decision to leave. So I just quote tweeted them and was like, this is misleading, because I was like, people are literally thinking that like Riot force them out or something like that because of this, when it was, I just posted an article where Needham saying quite the opposite. And so, yeah, that thing got community noted, which is funny. Yeah, awkward. Especially as a goodbye post to the league. Oh, okay. Anyway, back on topic. Yeah. So I don't know. I'm down to agree with it. I'll take it. I think what they did was incredible, and I'm happy that we got a call like this, because it would have sucked to have to kind of blow past it. So, caller, thank you to take anything you want to shout out here at the end.
Yeah, I want to shout out my friend Jisoo, who discussed this take with me for like 2 hours or so. Shout out to my girlfriend who stayed up to watch finals with me. And then finally to both you guys and Alienware for making this podcast. And then finally to T1. So hopefully they keep this roster and make this claim like definitive.
Yeah, I hope they keep the roster. I know that everybody keeps us saying like this might be the last time this roster plays, but like, come on, they just won. I don't think anybody could even blame any of this. It's not like they had like the Piosik thing going on, Anyway, thanks for the call, and we'll catch you next time. Also, Tracy from who is or was a part of Golden Guardians in the Twitch chat said that Riot approved that Twitter post. So I don't know why Riot would have done that. I assume Riot just sort of sped past it or something like that. I don't know, but
I mean, who knows?
that's very goofy.
Maybe your speculation about the Golden Guardians thing's true for the that one as well. Like just two social media teams talking to each other, like, you know what's going on? No, I don't know. Yeah, sure, looks good to me.
Yeah, it looks fine. Sure, approved. I slept. They're approving it like after staying up all night watching World Finals. They're like, yeah, cool, sounds fine. Yeah. All right. Anyway, uh, Tracy, I did see your Discord DM. It's hard because I got another message from somebody else about it. So I don't know. I'm not saying you're lying or anything like that. It's just I'm going off of the other person telling me this. Thank you to Pilgrim Panda, Jolly Great, Amoria, Real Celsius. Thanks,
Hello.
folks. Treethan is here. Treethan, where are you calling from? Treethan is here. Treethan, where are you calling from?
Did we have the Discord bug?
Maybe
you want to try going on air too?
Yeah, let's try on air too.
Okay.
Treethan, I see you're muted. Can you unmute and let us know where you're calling from? Oh no!
It's a disaster. Discord on the 1 yard line.
There we go. There we go. Hi. Where are you calling from, Treethan?
I'm calling from Jersey City, New Jersey.
What do you want to talk about on the show?
I think Jojo should have went to Liiv SANDBOX.
Ugh. Hey, it was great talking to you, Treethan.
No worries, man.
We're gonna have to wrap up the show. No, fine, whatever. Why do you think he should have gone to Liiv SANDBOX?
Just think that would have been really great to showcase actual North American talent in a league that is, just one Worlds. So I'd really like to see how he would stack up in that. And maybe that could possibly make more actual domestic fans in North America and actually help breed new North American talent to even go up in the LCS. Thought it would have been actually really healthy for the scene.
Man, I disagree on every literal thing that you just said.
That's fine.
I don't think this would have been good for the league. I think people would have been like, "Wow, we lost our only good, not our only, but our
MVP,
our biggest talent to LCK." I don't think that would have encouraged people to watch more LCS. I am not convinced that Liiv SANDBOX is the best place to showcase. Like, if he goes over there and gets shit on, that's fine. It's not like this is T1 or something like that. I just don't agree with any of it. It's funny because I thought you were going to say like this could be great for JoJo's career, and if he wants to be the best player he can be, playing in the LCK is probably where he's going to get best. That's the one place where I would have thought if you were coming at it from a JoJo career perspective, I could have seen that. Everything else I disagree with.
Totally unrelated, but someone in Twitch chat said that Sven, Reckless, Revenge, like they were just like listing all the like currently teamless players are going to be T1's academy team, and I was like, damn, that would be so fucking cool, but absolutely not worth it. But like for all the like players who don't get teams to join like tier 2 Korea somehow and just like play against each other there and then come back, after honing their skills in the hyperbolic time chamber.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. But Mark, what do you think of this? Should JoJo have left?
No, I'm glad he didn't. But a morbidly curious part of me just also would love to see what happens.
Cheesy Baller in the chat says, "Hear me out. He boomerangs to show them how it feels." I agree. That's a reason I would agree.
There, he has a great split and then he's out.
Yeah, I love that. I'm convinced. Treethan, you should have said that. That would have got me over.
Did you kick him or did he leave?
No, he left. I didn't kick him.
He just no shout outs, just like I'm out of
I didn't even notice he left. Treethan, if you come back,
I heard the Discord noise.
We'll give you your shout outs, but yeah, I did not kick Treethan. Okay, well here, I'll just hey, this is Treethan. I'd like to shout out Alienware and Only One and Mark and Travis. You guys are great. I love that you guys do the show so often. It's fantastic. And also shout out my friends who are listening and my girlfriend. All right, cool. Thank you, Treethan. Thanks for the call. We'll catch you next time. All right.
See you, dude.
So that wraps up the show. I don't know. Mark, what do you want to shout out?
I don't know, man. Shout out Worlds being done. It was a good run. Shout out returning to regular sleep schedules probably. Have Thanksgiving coming up this week. Going to be flying home to see the fam. Shout out
when do you leave?
You?
Wow.
Tuesday night.
299
super
episodes.
Late.
And this is the first time Mark's shouting me out. Tuesday night.
Tuesday night. Yep.
How late?
Pretty late. What's up?
I wanted to get my stuff from you that you picked up at my apartment.
Well, Ashley will be here. She might be able to help you out.
Oh, maybe. Is there any way you could just go give it to Kobe? I think he's home.
Sure. Well, yeah, why not? I don't have anything else going on in my life. Why don't I just be your errand boy? Pick up my package, run it inside, run it outside, set up my TV, set up my Xbox, whatever you're doing.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think that's right. Listen, Mark, if you're a broke boy, just say so.
Oh, shit. Got the fresh drama that we're not going to touch on this show, but wow, what a take.
All right, so that is the show. Thanks everyone for watching. We didn't get very much free agency stuff, but quite frankly, I didn't see very much on Twitter. I thought that there'd be a lot of tweets. Normally there are people signing
Breaking
and all
news,
stuff. So yeah, maybe I'll stream some more later on in the week and kind of react to that stuff. Mark's traveling, so we won't be able to do that. Next episode is our 300th episode. I don't know if we're going to be able to do it next week. We might take. When are you traveling back to LA, Mark?
I think Friday, basically Saturday.
Oh, okay. So you'll be packed, but I still don't know if we'll be able to do it. I am trying to figure out if we can do something special or unique for that, but I think it's going to take a little bit to figure that out. Hopefully we will be able to do the show soon. But thank you to everybody who watched. Happy holidays to those that are in the States and are celebrating. I hope you all have a nice little break for those of you that are getting breaks, and I hope that for those of you that continue to have to work or study or any of that stuff, that it is easier for you than it normally is. I'm going to go give lead a panel discussion on romantic theory in the next 30 minutes. So if you're in Salt Lake City, Utah, come buy a ticket to Dragonsteel and listen to me in 30 minutes talk about romantic theory and how it relates to the 3 secret projects. Just a standard Monday night for me. But other than that, thanks everyone for watching, and we'll catch you next time.